I woke up to the sound of my alarm. I groaned and stretched before going to have a bath. When I went out to fix myself some breakfast, I saw Greg, my roommate. He was typing on his laptop. I frowned as I moved closer. That looked like my Netflix account. "Good morning, Greg. Is that my Netflix account?" I asked. "I needed to watch a movie, so I borrowed your password," he said, without looking back. I told him that he should ask me before he used my things, and he made a non-committal sound that I interpreted as agreement. I went to the kitchen to make scrambled eggs and stopped in shock. The kitchen was a mess. Greg must have cooked here. Spilled milk was on the counter. Cheerios were all over the sink, and dirty plates were placed haphazardly in the sink. I scowled as I put things in order. Greg never returned what he used. He always made a mess of everything and refused to clean it up. I was tired of putting up with him. I cleaned the kitchen before eating. My girlfriend, Josie, was coming over. She usually came over to my place for the weekend. I looked around the house and made everywhere neat. Greg ignored me, laughing at whatever he was watching. The doorbell rang, and I hurried to open the door. Josie was smiling at me, and I hugged her, inhaling her fresh scent. She laughed and asked if I missed her that much. "You have no idea," I replied as I led her inside. I needed a break from everything that had to do with Greg. Greg glanced up as we went to my room, his gaze lingering on Josie. I stiffened and held Josie more firmly, shutting the door with a bang. The next day, Josie and I decided to eat out. Her phone was pinging incessantly. She brought it out and checked it. Josie angrily shoved her phone in my face. I focused on what she was showing me, and my mouth dropped open. Greg had been sending her messages, extremely gross messages. He told her he loved her and wanted to be with her. The messages he sent were full of declarations of love and admiration for Josie's body. The last messages were pictures of him I can't even describe. "I can't deal with this. Tell him to stop. I've blocked his number already. I can't come over to your place, not with that weirdo there." Josie crossed her arms, looking angrier than I've ever seen her. I rubbed my face. I was furious with Greg. He was hitting on my girlfriend. I knew we were not friends, but I never knew he could do something like this. I calmed Josie down and told her we would stay at her place during the weekends. I didn't want her anywhere near Greg. Josie was visibly angry. "Hey, why is the most beautiful girl in this place frowning?" I asked, coaxing a smile from her. I exhaled in relief. I didn't want her to be in a bad mood. For the next few weeks, I stayed over with Josie on the weekends. I spoke very little to Greg. I still cleaned up after Greg, my patience running out gradually. It was a Saturday, and Josie and I bought some drinks. We chatted and drank till we both got drunk. I put Josie to sleep after placing a glass of water and aspirin by her bedside for the hangover she would definitely have the next day. It was very late, so I ordered an Uber and went home. I stumbled inside and hit the switch. The light was very bright for my now sensitive eyes that I had to squint. My mouth was bitter. I made my way to the bathroom, holding the wall for support. I picked up my brush and recoiled in disgust. It was stinking. I sniffed it and gagged. It smelled like it had been in someone's butt. I rinsed my mouth and went to my room. I rubbed my eyes. Matter of fact, I wasn't seeing well. My room was a mess. Someone had ransacked my wardrobe. All my clothes were strewn on the floor. There was a yellowish stain on my bed, like vomit. My body started to shake in anger. I stormed to Greg's room, not caring that it was midnight. I threw open his door and yelled his name. He jerked awake, his blue eyes roving around before focusing on me. "I have had enough of this!" He asked me to lower my voice, and I scoffed. I was beyond reason. I would tell his crimes for the entire world to hear. I went to his wardrobe and poured his clothes out. He ran to me, wondering what was going on. "You're leaving today. I can't do this anymore." He looked at me like I had grown an extra head. Then he laughed. He told me I had to be joking. When I confronted him about the mess in my room, he merely shrugged and said it was nothing serious. He said he was looking for a nice shirt to wear. "And my toothbrush? It smells dreadful." "Oh, that. I meant to toss it away when I was done using it. I forgot." My hand fisted and connected with the side of his face. He never saw it coming. His head flew to the side. I stood there smirking, feeling good about myself. My hand was throbbing, but I felt no pain. He tried to punch me, but I dodged it, swaying on my feet. My vision blurred. The drinks were affecting my balance. I shook it off. "You have been nothing but a nuisance," I yelled, and punched him in the stomach. He doubled over in pain, clutching his stomach. I felt so satisfied to expel all the anger in my system. "And this is for my girlfriend!" I brought my knee up and smashed his face. He shouted for me to stop. Blood was running down his face. I stood there, panting. He was clearly in pain. He suddenly rushed forward and knocked me to the floor. I hit the back of my head on the floor and saw stars. My drunk state wasn't helping matters. Someone pulled him off me. It was the security man. He shook his head at both of us and informed us that we were disturbing others. He told us he met the door unlocked and headed straight for the source of the noise. He yelled at us some more, saying something about us acting like hormonal teenagers. Greg and I were too busy glaring at each other to listen to him. The security man drove us to the hospital in tense silence. After I got treated, I went home, concluding in my mind that I couldn't live with Greg anymore. I got home before he did and packed my things. I would stay with Josie till I get another apartment, and I would make sure I have no roommate this time.
Honeymoon. That was one word that always brought out the joy in me. I don't know why, but it always did. And coupled with the fact that this time it was my own honeymoon, my joy was even contagious. I was happy, and everyone was happy for me. After about 6 months of dating, I eventually got married to my Prince Charming, Jacob. He was everything and more. I just had to be happy for myself. The following day was amazing. Jacob was naturally an emotional person, and when I walked down the aisle with my dad, he just smiled in tears as he looked at me with utmost wonder. Who knew that just being in a wedding gown could make a grown man cry more so in front of many people? He didn't try to hide the fact that he adored and cherished me, and at that moment, I just knew that he was the one I would keep falling in love with over and over again. The program went by really fast, or I just didn't focus on all what the priest said. I was far too interested in something else, the face of the one that was about to be called my husband. And then it came. "You may now kiss the bride." Jacob walked towards me with love, and I just stood here ready to receive him with love. It was at that moment that I understood what he meant when he said the kiss on your wedding day just feels different. With stories that I've heard from girls, I was too excited to plan my honeymoon when Jacob told me that it would be a surprise, and that I shouldn't bother planning anything as he already had everything under control. Eventually, it was here, the surprise he had planned, and I couldn't wait for it. He drove us to the airport, and when I asked where we were going, he merely smiled at me and told me to relax. We ended up traveling to Los Angeles. I was ecstatic. It was everything I wanted and more. We rented a car, and I sat beside him, smiling. "Where are we headed?" Jacob laughed without mirth. "You'll find out, dear." I looked at him again. It wasn't like him to joke around with anything he said, and it was not like him to also use the word dear. He hated it with so much passion. Either way, I sat quietly in the car and just assumed it was part of the surprise he had planned for me, even if that meant that a part of me was scared about whatever was going to happen. A few minutes later, or so I thought, I slept off at some point during the drive and only woke up when I felt the car already come to a stop. When I opened my eyes, Jacob was no longer at the driver's side or anywhere near the car. In front of me was a very big mansion. I got down from the car and walked towards the house while taking every step carefully. The house was really beautiful. I'd give that to whoever came up with blueprints of the house. "Mrs. Thompson." I turned back at the voice that called me, and in front of me was a man probably in his 30s. If not for the fact that I didn't know who he was, I would have hugged him so much for calling me that name. It felt good to be a part of someone now, to be a part of Jacob. The man told me he was our butler and would be taking care of us. I wrapped my arms around my middle and searched for Jacob. As if I summoned him, he came out of the house and walked straight towards me. My smile froze at the cold look on his face. I asked him if anything was wrong, and he said no. He went ahead to tell me that this was my new home. I didn't know what to make of it. We never discussed moving here. As much as I loved the house, I loved my life back at home. I told Jacob that he had to be joking because there was no way we could live here. His face turned red with anger, and he marched up to me and slapped my face. My hand touched my face in shock. Jacob just slapped me. "You're my wife," he spat. "You do exactly as I say. I own you now." "Jacob?" He slapped me again. Tears slipped down my face, and I wordlessly followed him inside. I got married to a monster. He took me to one of the rooms and locked me inside. He told me he'll be back for me. I was dreading when he would come back. I sat on the bed crying. There was no way to contact anyone. My phone was still in the car. How didn't I see this before? I was carried away by his handsome face and blue eyes that I failed to notice that Jacob was a psychopath. Jacob came back after a while and forced himself on me. No matter how much I pleaded with him, he didn't listen. He left me sobbing on the bed, a wicked smile on his lips. When the butler brought in my dinner, I kept the knife, a plan forming in my mind. I wasn't going to be anyone's plaything. Jacob had picked the wrong person to mess with. The door to my room opened, and I sat up in bed with some trepidation. Jacob came inside with another man and barely glanced my way. I stood up from the bed and tried to put as much distance between us as possible. Jacob and the other man started kissing, and my jaw dropped open. I couldn't tear my eyes away as they began to undress each other. When they were both in their boxer shorts, Jacob looked at me and laughed. "Want to join in our fun?" he asks before grabbing me and planting his lips on mine. I suddenly brought my knee up, and he doubled over in pain. I immediately pointed the knife to his face, and he backed away. I ran out without looking back. I heard the sound of a door opening and the butler's voice. My breaths came in frightened gasps. I saw the keys to the rental car on the table and dove for it. The car started as the butler came running out. I drove the car through the gate and I was free. Now that I escaped, I let the tears run free. How was I supposed to trust anyone after this? This was one honeymoon I would like to forget.
One of the first jobs I had was at KFC. When it comes to the experience working there and the staff, everything was amazing. But something happened to me shortly after I got hired. Something so terrible that it made me quit my job and stay away from that place forever. But let us start from the beginning. I was a young, hopeful teen. I just finished high school, and instead of thinking about parties and having fun, I had a different agenda. I wanted to have my own money. I wanted to be independent. My parents always supported me, but I felt I was old enough to do something for myself. As I was searching for a job, I saw an ad in the newspaper. It seemed that a KFC opened in the next town and they were in need of staff. It was just a 20-minute drive, so I wouldn't mind commuting. Surely enough, I gave them a call. The ad said they do not require experience, so I knew I was a shoo-in. The manager was the one who picked up the phone. He seemed really nice and answered any questions I had. "Do you think you can come swing by tomorrow at 9 a.m. for a formal interview?" David, the manager, asked me. I said it will not be a problem, and the next morning, there I was. Of course, I was sweating bullets, but his calm demeanor made me feel comfortable. After a few minutes of standard questions, I heard the magic words. "When can you start?" Right away," I replied, with a wide smile on my face. Finally, I was about to earn my own money, and I would grasp the independence I dreamed about. David laughed. "I like your enthusiasm. How about you start tomorrow?" he said while shaking my hand. I was all set and done. I was a KFC employee. A professional career started about 22 hours after the interview. I showed up the next day ready to give it my all. Everything went amazing for the first 2 days. I did my job, people were coming in all the time, and we had a pretty cool atmosphere among ourselves. Of course, that would not last. It was the 3rd day. "Hey, David, what is going on outside?" I asked him, hearing some ruckus in front of the store as I was cooking the chicken in the back. "Some protesters, they're trying to boycott us. They said our restaurant was built on top of a burial ground dedicated to the first settlers that arrived in this area when there wasn't anything here but trees and wildlife." The two of us went to the front of the store to see exactly what people were saying. There were about 20 angry citizens with signs that said, "Ban the corporations." Of course, that didn't sit well with me. I asked David if anything illegal had been done so that the store could be built, but he told me that all of the memorials had been moved to the other side of town, so everything was in order. We went back to work, but ever since that day, things started to change. It was like all our energy was slowly but surely being sucked out of us. You may call it fatigue, but that wasn't the case. Each night, as I was driving home, I felt like I was about to pass out at the wheel. I didn't think it was something serious. I started drinking coffee even though I never had it before. It still didn't help. After about 2 weeks in, one evening, David and I stayed late. He had some work to do in his office and I volunteered to clean up the kitchen. At around 1 a.m., I heard something in the dining area. I knew that the door was closed and I personally put a sign on the door. I put down the brush that I had in my right hand and went to see what was going on. The sound I heard resembled a chair falling on the floor, but as I got there, everything was in order. Then, I went into David's office. "Hey, were you in the dining area just now?" No, I'm pretty swamped here," David responded without taking his eyes off of some files he was reviewing. I returned to my station and continued to scrub. Another sound caught my attention. I was sure that David was playing a prank on me. I returned to the dining area and again, nothing was out of order. I went into his office and asked him again, and as I did that, another sound came from the same area. But this time, David was in front of me, so it couldn't be him. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah, it seemed like something fell on the floor," he said while getting up from his chair. He thought that maybe some of the protesters broke into the KFC, but when we got into the dining area, nothing. All of a sudden, the lights went off. Both of us looked around, and then the lights went on again, and then off, and then on. This continued for about 2 minutes. It was pretty spooky, I'm not gonna lie. David went to check out the fuse box. I remained in the middle of the dining area. "Ah!" I heard. It was David. Something happened to him. I rushed over there in the back of the store. He was sitting in a corner on the floor in the fetal position. "What happened? Are you okay?" I asked, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking over my shoulder. I turned around, and as I did, I saw a face. It was a man looking right at me from the shadows. "Who are you?" I asked while taking a step back. He didn't respond. Instead, he opened his mouth very wide. His skin stretched more than it was humanly possible. A loud shriek came out, forcing me to cover my ears. The sound was so disturbing that I fell to my knees. The man then came out of the shadows and slowly glided toward me. I looked down at his feet, but they weren't there. His body ended at the knees. My eyes were fixed on his. My heart started beating out of my chest, and I felt a freezing gust of wind going through me. It was a ghost. I was sure of it. The shrieking didn't stop. The ghost got close to me, and in a blink of an eye, he flew right through my chest and after that, everything went black. I woke up a few minutes later. The lights were on. I looked behind me and saw David in the same position. He refused to get up. I called an ambulance and they took him to the hospital. David recovered after several sessions with a therapist. I resigned the next day, but still kept in touch with other employees.
Roommates. Almost all of us have had them at some point in our lives. They could be a blessing, or in some cases, they could be a true nuisance. Let me tell you about a time in my life when me and my girlfriend Alice were at the start of our careers. We just finished college a couple of years back and managed to get some entry-level jobs with startups that created social media apps. I'm not going to mention their names because they're not important to the thing that happened to us. As I was saying, we were young, and the jobs we had didn't pay nearly as much for us to afford our own place, but we managed to find a wonderful apartment online. We fell in love with it, but it came with a catch. It was slightly above our budget. Hence, we could not have the entire place to ourselves. The owner seemed pretty cool with us moving in to occupy one room. In fact, he had already found another tenant to occupy the other one. Before we moved in, we met the guy who already paid rent there. His name was Will. He seemed a little odd, but we didn't think too much about it. That night, we discussed it a bit, just the two of us. I know that it's not ideal, but we must share a place with another person so we can afford the rent, I told my Alice. Yeah, well, I guess you're right, but that guy creeped me out a little, she said. From starting, Will seemed a little odd. He would open his mouth and look at a person talking to him without blinking his eyes. The place is in a great neighborhood. We could move in on our own, but it has to be at the edge of town, I told her. You're right. Anyway, it's not like we'll stay with this guy forever. And from that moment on, we were all set. We packed up the next day, and before we knew it, we were at the new place. The guy wasn't at home, but the landlord gave us a key. The apartment was quite spacious. As we got it, we went straight into our soon-to-be bedroom. After that, we unpacked and managed to create our little private space in there. My girlfriend had 2 small paintings that she hung on the walls. After that, we went outside our bedroom to explore the rest of the place in detail. But one single door was locked. It was our roommate Will's door. Alice thought that it was a bit odd, but finally we agreed that we'd do the same thing if we were him. Anyway, time passed and we were still alone. We managed to clean up a little, even the living room and the kitchen. The place was beautiful, but didn't really seem all that clean, and me and my girlfriend were sort of clean freaks. It looked spotless, she told me while she was taking off her cleaning gloves. I agreed, and we went into our bedroom to relax. We were cuddling and, well, we heard the front door open. Alice jumped out of bed, startled, and I followed her shortly. We both got out of the bedroom to say hi to our new roommate, but as soon as he got into the living room, he went into his bedroom. We just saw his bedroom door shut. He didn't even say hello to us. Alice thought he was quite rude. I thought maybe he was a little shy. The night went on as usual, nothing special. We grabbed some snacks, which we had in bed while we watched some romantic comedies on Netflix. The next morning, I got up an entire hour earlier than my girlfriend. The first thing that I did was go into the kitchen and make myself a cup of coffee. As I was trying to find my way there, being really sleepy, I bumped into someone. It was Will. Good morning, I greeted him with a big smile on my face. Will looked at me from head to toe as if he was examining me, and instead of saying good morning, he just said, "Nice shoes, they look expensive." I paused for a moment, confused. Then I remembered I had left my shoes in the hall last night. Thank you, they were quite expensive. I had to save for a couple of months to afford them, I told him. But his expression didn't change. He was so serious. Well, you better take good care of them. You don't want to lose them, he replied. Alice soon woke up, and I told her about my conversation with Will. She was too sleepy to have an opinion on it, so I changed the subject. The time came for me to go to work. I looked for my phone all over. It was an old iPhone, but I had it for at least 4 years. I became really quite fond of it. I asked Alice if she saw it, but she said no. We even tried to call it, but it seemed like it was off. As I was running late, I thought I'd look for it when I came back. Anyway, later that evening I came home and Alice wasn't there. but my roommate was. I asked him if he saw my phone. To my surprise, he started acting like I accused him of stealing it. "What would I do with your old and slow phone?" he yelled. Something didn't seem right. "How do you know my phone is old?" I asked him. Without even answering, he turned around and went towards the front door, slamming it behind him. I didn't see him for the rest of the night. The next day, it was a Saturday, so me and my girlfriend slept in. We got up around noon, we made some breakfast, and then decided to go for a walk as it was nice outside. "Did you see my earrings?" Alice asked me. "Which ones?" "The small gold ones. I had them right here on this table," she told me. We started searching for them, but no luck. I thought it was weird. First my old phone and now the earrings. Something wasn't right. After staying out all evening, we got back around 8:30 p.m. Being in the mood for some Call of Duty, I went upstairs to start my PS4. But to my surprise, it wasn't there. I went straight to our roommate's bedroom and I tried to open the door. As usual, it was locked. I banged on the door, but he didn't answer. I guess he wasn't there. The next thing I remember was that I told Alice to call the police. They quickly arrived and started searching the building for our roommate. An hour had passed, but he was nowhere to be found. The cops had to call a locksmith to open the door of his room. As we went into his room, I was shocked. Unlike Will, his room was all neat and tidy, like sparkling clean. The police searched his room but could not find any of our stuff. Before leaving, they told us that they would call back if they found anything. Me and Alice looked at each other with utter sadness. An hour passed and we were still pondering over what to do next. Suddenly, Alice's phone rang. It was the police. They informed us that they had managed to track Will's car. We rushed to the spot, and as soon as they opened the door, a lot of stuff started falling out. It was like it was an avalanche. And amongst those things was my PS4, my phone, and Alice's earrings. Will must have stolen from others as well, as there was a lot of stuff on the back seat. He was arrested soon after, and fortunately for us, we got a new roommate.
I stepped into the elevator after receiving the key to my room. It was finally the week I had looked forward to for days. The week to let go of my worries and just enjoy the bliss of nature. I was happy for the beach and the mini pool around the hotel. This was the perfect place to relax. Holding on to my bags tightly in the elevator, I waited patiently for the elevator to get to the floor my hotel would be. "Hey, beautiful," I heard a thick voice behind me. It was the guy that was in the elevator when I stepped in. Why in the world would you call a stranger you meet in the elevator beautiful? Some people really didn't know how to communicate. "Yeah?" I asked, confused as to why he called me. I would have never turned to answer, but seeing that it was just the two of us in the elevator, he must have been talking to me. "I'm Zach. You look really pretty though. Mind if I touch your hair or hug you? You look really clean," he said while looking at me with emotions that I could not decipher. I responded in the negative, feeling uncomfortable. "Come on, pretty. That is going to make me sad. I'm sure you don't want to see a sad or angry guy like me. Let's do this in a simple manner," he said, walking to me in an intimidating way. I prayed silently for the elevator to open soon, coupled with the prayer that he should not be on the same floor as I was. I moved away from him as he stepped closer, my pulse and fear rising. "Don't run from me, baby girl. Before he could finish his sentence, the elevator's door opened and I rushed out with my bags, happy to be away from him. I opened my door quickly, hoping he was not after me. I rushed in and closed the door behind me, not taking any chances of anyone sneaking up on me for whatever reason. Hopefully, that would be the last time I would see him. I slept in that night and ordered room service to fill my stomach. I was really tired, and the guy I met earlier just made it all worse. I slept off listening to my favorite song, Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding. The song always had a way of putting me in the right mood even if everything was going off. It was the song I needed for the mindset that everything would be better tomorrow and things would make absolute sense. The light rays entered the room through the small opening between the curtains, waking me up. I smiled to myself, taking it as a sign that the day would be good. I wanted to walk around instead of just sitting in the room ordering room service, so I could enjoy the whole experience that came with this vacation. After dressing up and getting ready for the day ahead, I went out of my room and headed for the beach first. It was a good place to be in such hot weather. As I stepped into the elevator, it was too late before I realized he was in the elevator with me. The door already closed, and it was pointless trying to open it after I just got in. Why is he always in this elevator? Does he sleep here? Why do I have to meet him early in the morning? Such a great way to start the day, I thought angrily as I looked pointedly away from the weird guy. "We meet again. I have been waiting for you all night," he spoke, his voice like that of someone who's been smoking for years and gradually losing his voice. I warned him that if he should try to touch me, I would report to the management. "Oh," he shivered sarcastically. "Linda, is that a threat I hear?" Linda? I didn't remember introducing myself to him yesterday. How did he get my name? I was lost in my thoughts before realizing that something was stroking my hair. He was moving me towards the wall of the elevator. I pushed him off, carefully enough to not let his head hit the wall of the other side. I wasn't going to be responsible for the death of anyone. The hotel would have to deal with this themselves. The elevator opened and I ran out. I better not see him around anymore when he got kicked out. I tried to calm down as I walked up to the receptionist. "Good morning, ma'am. Hope you had a good night." She sounded professional, probably how they were taught to act around their customers. "Yes, thank you. I need to report something that I would be glad if something is done about it." I had my fingers crossed. Who knows what the weird guy could do next? "What could that be, ma'am?" I explained my experience with the guy in the elevator, waving my arms in agitation. I described how the guy looked to her and mentioned his name. "Zach?" She said his name continuously, trying to remember if someone who fit into the description came to mind while checking the lists of the customers on her computer. "That would be Mr. Zach Hall," she asked. "Ma'am, I think you have the description mixed up. Mr. Zach is a very good customer of this hotel and someone who has been coming here for a long time. I don't think he could do any of those things you mentioned. He is a good man. I know him personally," she said, her eyes throwing weird glances at me like I was crazy. "You probably don't understand me. I'm being stalked by a customer and he is being a threat to me. You're supposed to investigate and see that I'm telling the truth here. What exactly are you telling me?" She informed me that even the manager would tell me the same thing. Apparently, Mr. Zach was a respected person in their hotel. I walked angrily into the elevator hoping the so-called Zach was not there. Thankfully, he wasn't there. As the elevator door opened to my floor, I stormed angrily into my room, ordering room service as I got in. Food was as important as safety. I needed to eat. I heard a knock after about 15 minutes. It was the food I ordered. Finally, someone was listening to something I needed. I asked the person to come in. It was Zach. "Surprise? Miss me?" His face held a sinister look as he spoke. He locked the door behind him. I dove for the telephone beside me and dialed the front desk. He ran for me as I screamed help into the receiver. "All I expected from you was a little courtesy." He banged my head on the table and my vision swam. My door opened and 2 security guards rushed in, carrying Zach off. The receptionist sent them up after hearing my cry for help. Zach was taken to the police station. That night was the last one I spent in that hotel. My vacation came to an abrupt end.